All right, lesson two, principal gasoline diesel fuel systems, Aipd OD1620. Lesson two, task two. All right, lesson two, function construction diesel fuel systems. Describe principal construction function diesel fuel systems. References. No supplementary references are needed for this task. All right, introduction. The fuel injected with the combustion chamber must be mixed thoroughly with the compressed air, with it distributed evenly, with possibly throughout the chamber, even with the function maximum efficiency exhibited. Maximum drivability. Well-designed diesel engine uses a combustion chamber designed for the engine intended use. Task illustrates function of diesel fuel system. It will describe the principal construction following components of the system: inspection system, injection system, fuel supply, pumps, governors, timing devices, combustion chamber. The combustion chamber described in following paragraphs most common cover virtually all of the design used in corrective automotive practices. Or your combustion chamber, open chamber. The open chamber is the simplest form of the diesel chamber. Is designed suitable for only for slow speed four-stroke cylinder cycle engines, but only also used widely in the two-stroke cycle diesel engine. In the open chamber, the fuel is injected directly into the space at the top of the cylinder. The combustion space is formed at the top of the piston. Cylinder head is usually shaped in providing a swirling action of the air that the piston comes with a compression stroke. There are no special pocket cells and passages to aid the mixing of the fuel and air. This type of the chamber requires higher injection pressure, greater degree of fuel atomization required other than combustion chambers to attain comparable level of fuel mixing. The chamber design is very susceptible to ignition lap. Shows an open combustion chamber. Or your pre-combustion chamber, figure 40. Pre-combustion chamber is an auxiliary chamber at the top of the cylinder connected with the main combustion chamber with a restricted throat or passage. Pre-combustion chamber conditions fuel with the final combustion into the chamber cylinder. The followed cut-out portion of the fuel top causes the turbulence in the main combustion chamber. The fuel enters the pre-combustion chamber to aid mixing with the air. The following steps occur during the combustion process. During the combustion stroke of the engine, as air is forced into the pre-combustion chamber because the air is compressed, it is hot, and at the beginning of the injection precaution chamber contains a definite volume of air. As the injection begins with the combustion start of the pre-combustion chamber, the burning of the fuel combined with the restricted passages to main combustion chamber creates a tremendous. Alright, shows figure 40, shows the pre-combustion chamber. Injection begins, power stroke. Amount of pressure of the pre-combustion chamber, the pressure for the initial combustion, will cause the superheated fuel charge to enter the main combustion chamber, tremendous vacuum. Velocity. Entering the mixture of the hits of the hollow output piston top, creating turbulence over the chamber, but ensure the complete mixing of fuel charge of the air, with the mixing ensure the event even cool, complete combustion chamber. The design will provide satisfactory performance, low fuel injector pressures, the course spread patterns because of the large amount of vaporization takes place with the combustion chamber. The chamber is also very hot. It's not very susceptible ignition lag, makes it more suitable for the high-speed application. Alright, turbulence chamber in 41. The turbulence chamber is simply different from the pre-combustion. It functions as different, is very little clearance but between the top and the piston and the head of the so high. Turbulence chamber show the injection and power stroke. Percentage of the air between the piston and the cylinder head is forward into the turbulence chamber. During the compression stroke of the chamber, the usually cylindrical the opening through the air must pass because smaller of the piston reef at the top of the stroke, thereby increase the velocity of the air in the chamber. The turbulence speed to approximately 50 times the crankshaft speed. The fuel injection is timed to occur with the turbulence in the chamber. The greatest of the ensure the thorough mixing of the fuel in the air. The result of the greater part of the combustion takes place with the turbulence chamber itself. The pressure created with the expansion burning gas is the force that drives the pistons pour downward on the power stroke. Alright, D, cylindrical combustion chamber. The cylindrical combustion chamber design principle that use the multi-fuel engine chamber consists of the basic open type of the chamber with a cylindrical shape, the relief at the top of the piston head of the chamber to work with conjunction with a strategically positioned injector intake port, which produces the swirling effect on the intake air entering the chamber, the operating the chamber, the valve. As the air enters the combustion chamber, the swirl effectively introduced by its shape of the intake port. Figure 42, view A on the following page. During the combustion stroke, the swinging motion of the air continue with the temperature of the chamber increase with the figure 42, view B on the following page. As the fuel is injected, approximately 95% of it is deposited heated in the position. The remainder mixture of the air of the cylindrical combustion chamber, figure 42, view C on the following page. If the combustion begins with the main portion of the fuel swept off the piston head of the high velocity swirl created with the intake of the combustion stroke, as the fuel is swept off the head, it burns through the power stroke, maintaining every combustion and eliminating the detonation. Figure 42, view DE in the following page. Show the cylindrical chamber. Alright, injection systems. The fuel injection principle method: the two methods of injection: fuel with the combustion ignition engine, and one method of the air injection. The method U with the blast of the air force with the pressure charge for the fuel into the combustion chamber. The other method is solid injection, which directs mechanical pressure for the display of the fuel itself with the force into the combustion chamber. Only solid injection systems will be discussed in this task because of the air injection virtually used in the automotive application. Fuel atomization penetration. Fuel spray entered with the combustion chamber that must conform with the chamber to chamber. The shape of the so that the fuel with the particles will be distributed thoroughly, mixed with the air. Shape of the spray will determine the degree of the atomization penetration produced. The orifice with which for the fuel entered with the chamber. The atomization term that indicate with the side of the droplets where the fuel is broken down. The penetration distance from the orifice of the fuel droplets attained with the given phase of the injection period. The dominant factors of the control penetration are length of the nozzle orifice, diameter of the orifice outlet, with the viscosity of the fuel, with the injection pressure of the fuel, with the increase of the ratio of the length of the orifice to the diameter, increase the penetration, decrease the atomization. Decrease the ratio will have the opposite effect to cover the penetration and atomization, opposed to mutually, but are important. Compromise necessary ununiform fuel distribution is to be attained. The amount of fuel pressurization for injection depending on the pressure over the air in combustion chamber, the amount of the turbulence in the combustion space. The function of the injection system. It is impossible to cover the operation construction of any type of minor injection systems in this lesson. However, the operation more common systems will be discussed. The three basic fuel functions of the diesel fuel injectors are kept in mind when studying operation of the system. It will be easier to understand how they work. The three basic functions are to meter the fuel accurately, to distribute the fuel equally to all cylinders at high enough pressure to ensure atomization, control start rate, and duration of the injection. Alright, multi-unit injector. General system operation for your 43 basic system consists of fuel supply pump, fuel filter, multiple unit injectors, and one injector at each cylinder of the operation system as follows. Figure 43 shows the general system of fuel supply pump, fuel filter, fuel supply, control rack, fuel element camshaft, fuel outlets, and nozzle spray nozzle. Alright, the fuel supply pump with the fuel filter of the provided low pressure supply with the fuel. The multiple unit injector pump pressure usually is regulated approximately 15 psi. Multi-unit injector pump contains an individual injection pump for each engine cylinder. Fuel is delivered from the multi-unit injector pump to the cylinders. Injector each cylinder for the time sequence regulated amount with the base accelerator, pedal, position, engine speed. Injector receiving the full charge of the respectively injection pumps and sprays in the combustion chamber. The parade pattern is tailored to provide best overall performance for the particular application. 2. Multi-unit injection pump. The multi-unit injection pump contains an individual plunger type injector pump. Each cylinder of these pumps are arranged in lines so that they can be driven with a common camshaft. The lobes of the camshaft arranged where they operate with the injector pump. The sequence that coincides with the firing order of the engine. The camshaft is driven by the engine through gears of speed exactly one half of the camshaft. The exact speed of the maintained with the injectors will each be delivered with a full charge of the being the respective cylinders for the power stroke. The power stroke will occur during every other crankshaft revolution in a 4-cycle diesel engine. Excess fuel flows from the injector pump through the relief valve back to the fuel tank. The relief valve usually is adjusted open approximately 15 psi. The pump consists of a finely fitted plunger that is actuated with a camshaft against the force of the plunger spring of the bore at the plunger rides the two passages machined into it. One of these passages, delivery port through the pump, is filled. The other passage is a spill port through the excessive fuel with discharge. When the plunger is fully into the return position, fuel flows into the pump cavity through the uncovered delivery port, out of the pump cavity through the uncovered spill port. The pump cavity always will keep the full as the full fuel flows through. The plunger moves up the boards its actuated camshaft ceiling. When the port's fuel is trapped with the cavity forced onto the pump and into the respective injector. D. The pump plunger has a rectangular slot cut into the lead with the top of the face down the side with the finally connected with a helical shape to the cavity called the bypass helix. The operation slot will allow the fuel to pass the bypass helix. The bypass helix passes over the spill port, will allow the portion of fuel charge of the bypass back to the fuel tank rather than injected with the engine cylinder. The output pump sleeve is made with a rotator. They have the gear teeth around the outside diameter of the horizontal tooth rack mesh for these gear teeth to rotate the sleeve without any plunger reaction. Move the rack back and forth. The outer pump sleeve is rotated. Move the delivery spill port relation with the bypass helix of the pump plunger. Enables the volume of the fuel injected within cylinders to vary with the charging and effective length of the pump construction stroke. The length of the pump stroke that occurred before the spill port is uncovered. The bypass helix of the rack extends down while the whole road injection pump, so they are all operated simultaneously. And if the result of the injection pump can be moved from full to no fuel delivery by moving the rack back and forth. The rack movement is controlled by a governor. Alright, when the plunger begins with the pump stroke with the cover of both the ports, when this happens, the pressure conserve of the fuel cover the spring load delivery valve to lift off the sheet, thereby permitting the fuel to discharge into the tubing of the leads of the spray nozzle. Instead with the bypass helix under cover the spill port, fuel begins to bypass this cover the pressure of the pump cavity to drop. High pressure delivery line with combined with the spring pressure cover the delivery valve to close. The delivery valve to close prevents fuel from the line draining back into the pump, which could cause the system to lose prime. The delivery valve C, but they also serve to reduce the pressure of the delivery line. Delivery valve with the accurately lapped and displacement piston incorporated into the accomplished pressure relief. Pressure is relieved in line by the increase the volume as the delivery valve seats. Fuel injector figure 44 shows the fuel injector. Proper engine performance fuel must be injected combustion space to define a spray pattern. Shows the bleeder valve overflow fuel returns to the pump. Fuel injection pump. Fuel passes nozzle needle valve. Fuel passes through the body of the lubrication spring. The fuel enters the nozzle holder body with a high pressure inlet with a pass down with the pressure chamber above the valve C. At the moment the pressure developed with the injection pump exceeds the force exerted, pressure adjusting spree with the nozzle will be lifted off the sheet. The result of the injection fuel into the cylinder of the valve is usually requires fuel pressure of 1,000 to 40,000 psi to open, depending on the engine combustion chamber requirements. A controlled seepage exists between the lap surface of the nozzle valve and the body to provide with lubrication leakage overflow pass for the spindle and into the pressure adjusting spring with a chamber with air to fuel leave the injector through the overflow outlet. Finally, overflow lines which lead back to the low pressure fuel line. Injector nozzles figure 44 on the following page. Because of the widely different requirements of the shape of the fuel spray with the various chamber design and the wide range of the engine power demands, there are a large variety of the injector nozzles in use. Spray nozzles are put into two basic categories: pintle nozzles and hole nozzles. Pintle nozzles are generally used for the engines having pre-combustion turbulence chambers, whereas hole nozzles generally are for the open chamber engines. In pintle nozzle, the nozzles carry the extension at the lower end with the form of the pin or pintle, which protrudes through the hole of the nozzle bottom and requires the injected fuel to pass through an annular orifice producing a hollow cone-shaped spray, nominally included with the angle which may be 0 to 6 degrees depending on the combustion chamber. The requirement of the projection of the pintle through the nozzle orifice includes self-cleaning effect and the discharging accumulation of carbon at this point. Specific type of pintle nozzle extensively with a small bore high-speed diesel engine is the throttle nozzling. Differs from the standard pintle nozzle. The pintle project with the nozzle for a much greater distance. Orifice of the bottom of the nozzle is much larger. Longer outstanding feature of the throttle nozzle is in control at the rate of which fuel is injected into the combustion chamber. When no fuel is being injected, the pintle extended through the nozzle orifice at the beginning of the injection period. Only a small quantity of fuel is injected into the chamber where the straight section of the pintle is in the nozzle orifice. The volume of the fuel spray will increase progressively as the pintle is lifted higher. Because of the straightening section, leave the nozzle orifice trapped tip of the pintle orifice provides larger opening flow of fuel. Alright, injector nozzles closed, pintle nozzle open, and then throttle and pintle nozzle open, closed, a hole in the nozzle and bottom view. Or another type of throttling now with the pintle flush for the nozzle body tip with the fuel delivery extent of the body with the maximum of fuel delivery. And this type of the fuel with the under high pressure from the injection pump back for the C air with the pintle forcing onward on again with the preloading spring with the spring through over the action with the spring hanger with the also return with the pintle into the seat ceiling with the nozzle again with the further injection dribble within the line pressure is relieved with the pump the pintle move with the outward with the fuel pressure with the increasing larger orifice the air is open with the flow angle of the pintle. The whole nozzles have no pintle, basically, are similar with the construction pintle nozzle. They have one or more spray over the air straight with the run past round passage with the tip of the nozzle beneath the valve seat with the spray with the orifice relative to the dense and compact gray general spray between them that determine normal through arrangement hole is made with the 18 holes provided with a larger nozzle. The diameter of these drilled orifices may be as small as 0.006 of an inch. The spray pattern may not be as symmetrical. In this case, though, the multi-fuel engine, when the spray pattern is off on one side as to the deposit of fuel properly, and its electrical combustion chamber, the size of the holes determine the degree of the atomization attained. The smaller the hole, the greater the atomization. The hole is too small that it will be impossible to get the fuel into the chamber during the short time allowed for injection. A hole is too large, there will be an over-rich mixture near the tip of the nozzle tip. Lean mixture distance from it using multiple holes in the injector tips usually overcome the difficulties because the holes are drilled small enough to provide proper atomization enough sufficient numbers to allow the proper amount of fuel to enter during the injection period. Alright, your wobble plate pump system, figure 46 on the following page. General system operation. Wobble pump plate system is basically the same as the multi-unit injection system. The difference of the system lies in the injection pump. The wobble plate pump allows the pump plate plungers to actuate a single wobble load by a single wobble plate instead of the camshaft. Alright, 46 does your wobble injection plate, which are the fuel nozzle, the plunger, the wobble plate, main drive gear, wobble plate push rod, wobble plate principal, plunger, opening rotary valve, triangular, start stroke, starter injection, closing, increased duration, fuel, end of injection, end of stroke. Alright, has a separate cam for each pump plunger. The metering of the fuel with a accomplished single actually located rotary valve with a wobble plate with a unit, whereas the rotary movement of the individual plungers contains amount of fuel multiple unit injection pump. The wobble plate pump principles. The plate is bound with a shaft set with the angle with the shaft rotate with the pump moves laterally in relation to the angle given either side of it. The pump the drive derives its name of the fact that the plate appears to wobble back and forth as it rotates. At the end of the push rod is plate with a quiet guide plate with the lays against the wobble plate with the push rod itself with the bore in the pump body so that they can move in direction parallel to the wobble pump shaft. The rotation of the wobble plate with the cover of the guide plate with the wobble, the moving the pushing back and forth. Push rod is connected with the pump plunger. The movement to the left actuates the pump and the delivery stroke with the spring returns to the suction stroke. Wobble plate injection pump. As the multiple unit injection pump, the wobble plate injection pump contains an individual plunger type for each cylinder. The pump plungers are spaced equally amount of the wobble plate. With the wobble plate rotates, it will actuate all of the individual injection pumps at any given time. During rotation, half of the plungers will move on their delivery stroke, while as the other half will be on the return stroke. The rotary metering valve is driven by the same shaft with the drive drives of the wobble plate. The rotary valve consists of the lap cylindrical shaft fitted with closely with the barrel to prevent fuel from escaping the ends of the fuel admitted with the barrel to the center of the valve, which contain the spoon-like diameter. The reduction of the diameter acts to the fuel reservoir. The reduced portion of the valve is also shaped in the band broken where the triangular land is the same diameter at the end of the valve. The reservoir created with the reducing portion of the valve is connected to each pump. The creative cavity individual ports of the pump cavities may be supplied with fuel. The reservoir receives constant low pressure fuel with the delivery pump. As with the multiple unit injector, the delivery pump pressure is regulated at approximately 15 psi. Your triangular land serves as the consecutively block each pump. The delivery pump port as it rotates. The triangular land is situated so that it will block each pump delivery pump port at the same time that the wobble plate is moving the respective pump plunger at the maximum speed through the delivery. The rotational relationship of the rotary valve with the wobble plate cover each pump to deliver the fuel charge with respect to the injector. The term of the pump rotates the pump injection unit with the connected with the fuel injector with the side with the firing order of the engine. Pump is gear driven the engine speed with exactly one half of the crankshaft. The end result of the injection fuel within each cylinder is beginning with each of its power stroke. To obtain zero delivery, the valve is moved endwise to the position of the delivery port with the near verb blocked in the triangle land. When this occurs, the movement of the pump plunger merely causes the fuel to move back and forth in the delivery pump with the result of the zero delivery to the injector due to the insufficient pressure to open spring-loaded delivery valves. Because of the pump delivery valve, the rotary valve is moved with the end wide of the triangular land because of the back block with the delivery ports due to the triangular shape of the land. The Further endwise movement of the rotary valve will increase with the time of the port is blocked. Will increase the fuel delivery. The end result of the fuel delivery can be controlled. Endwise movement of the rotary valve. The endwise movement of the rotary valve is accomplished by the control lever. The position of the control lever is determined by the governor. All right, your distribution system. General system operation, figure 47 of the following page. Distribution injection system and other mode of diesel engines classified. Low pressure system pumping meter distributing operation take place in low pressure, high pressure required for injection. And then it shows another picture. It is built up with the injector, each of the cylinder with the suction pump lift the fuel with the tank that delivers the float chamber. From the second lower pressure, the pump delivers fuel to the distributor. Fuel passes through the distributor metering pump divided into measured chamber charges. Fuel charges delivered back to the distributor, wherever they are spread into the injector's proper sequence. The measured charges then are sprayed in the engine cylinders. Proper time under the high pressure fuel injector fuel injectors. Alright, your distributor. Distributor consists of the rotating diff of the stationary cover with the fuel line with individual injectors connected with the disc and cover the shear of the holes when the properly indexed for the patch of fuel supply pump with the metering of the pump with the disc at the time that it occurs. Metering pump is moved down the suction stroke of the permitting of the meter pump to the fill with the oil with the disc continue to rotate. It lines up with the correct discharge hole with the cover. The meter plunger begins as delivery stroke forcing the fuel into the proper injector line. As it continues to rotate, this works in the same time sequence and the conjunction metering pump with the fuel filled with the remaining cylinders rotating disc turns 1/2 crankshaft speed with the power stroke with the other curve with every other crankshaft revolution 4-stroke cycle diesel engine. Alright, your metering unit, figure 48 on the following page. The metering unit is closely fitted with a reciprocating pump obtained with the motion through the link of the plunger lever. The plunger lever is operated with the vertical lever, the control of the term of the eccentric rock lever running directly off the cam of the fuel pump main shaft. The position of the vacuum lever is eccentric of the rock cover to determine the travel of the plunger lever in turn travel the metering pump plunger. The pump plunger starts onward controlled stroke that pushes fuel into the injector through the patch form of the rotating distributor disc. The stroke over the metering plunger determines the amount of fuel going into each of the injector varying changing position of the plunger lever between the stop pin of the cam rocker lever. The position of the plunger lever is adjusted by governor through the control lever. Alright, 48 show the fuel metering system, show the metering plunger, the link, the cam rocker level, stop pin, control lever, the roller, stop pin, pivot, the cam roller, plunger lever. Alright, injectors, figure 49 on the following pane of the injector consists of the forged body with the properly fitted with the plunger. Plunger is course down with the engine camshaft against the spring action through a rocker arm push rod. Fuel cap is bound with the end of the body combined with a hole type nozzle. Fuel metering pump force of the precisely measured fuel charge into the cup intake stroke of the engine and quantity of the fuel charge based on the speed and load requirements of the engine. The operation system depends on the injector delivery line being full of the fuel. It will flow naturally with any of the fuel added by the fuel. Metering pump will expel equal amount of the fuel into the injector. The fuel line with the cup during the compression stroke of the engine compressed if the air is forced through the small holes into the cup. The fuel tip of the cup exposed with the intense heat of the compression air rushing through the holes of the nozzle tip serve as the break of the fuel charge and inlet droplets. Alright, 49 show the distributor type unit injectors, plunger link, plunger spring, the check valve, plunger body, fuel intake, preheated injection end stroke. A few degrees with the top of the descent at the beginning with the power stroke of the injector plunger force down cover the fuel charge to be sprayed onto the cup of the nozzle holes into the combustion chamber with the downward movement of the injector plunger is spread out with the entire power stroke. There is a small check valve located in the inlet passage injector body purpose of allow the flow for the enter for the injector pump cup then block high combustion chamber pressure from blowing air into the injector delivery lines. Unit injection system, figure 50 on the following page. Overall system operation. Unit injection system operates in the same manner. Multiple unit injector. The difference is rather usually using centrally located unit, hose, high pressure pumps, control racks, pressure regulators, delivery lines, all incorporated into each injector. This eliminates the need of high pressure lines and other apparatus beside fuel supply pump. This is your unit injection system. Fuel supply. Fuel is drawn with the fuel tank of the fuel supply pump. The primary fuel filter directly with the individual injectors. Fuel supply to low pressure, approximately 20 psi. Injector units, figure 51. Unit injectors combine the injection pump with the fuel valve with the nozzle with a single housing. These units provide complete independent nozzle system for each cylinder of the units mounted with the cylinder head of the spray nozzle protruding into the combustion chamber. A clamp bolt of the cylinder head, the fitting of the machine relief on each side with the injector hole with the injector in play with the wood-cut water-cooled copper tube that passes through the cylinder head of the tapered lower and the labor fuel seat with the copper tube fouling the tight seal with the wood stem with the high pressure inside of the cylinder. Injector operates as follows. Fuel supply with the injector through the filter cap after passing the fine grade filter element inlet passage with the fuel filled with the annular shape supply chamber created between the pushing and slip deflector. 51 shows your unit injector cam, show the injector fowler, cam, spring, injector bushing, plunger, injector shell, the spray tip, spill detector filter element, injector body, injector rack, and half load, no injection, and idling load, full load. Are the bushing boards connected with the fuel supply with the two funnel-shaped ports on each side of the different height? The plunger operates up and down with the bushing board with the plunger action with the camshaft built with the right into the engine. The operation takes place with the rocker arm pushes the rod with the broad roller type follower with a spring loaded to prevent component damage to the event with the injector nozzle clogging. Plunger is situated under the flower with the spring loaded to make it foul with the camshaft. The plunger can be rotated, operated in its axis of the gear with a mesh for the control rack. Each injector rack is connected by an easily detachable joint to a lever common control tube, which is turned linked to the governor and the throttle. For meeting purpose of the reset, the upper helix, lower helix, the straight cut off the machine, lower end of the plunger relation for the upper helix, lower cut off the two ports with the chain of the rotation of the plunger. Plunger moves down with the fuel with a high pressure cylinder. Pushing is first displaced through the ports back into the supply chamber until the lower edge of the plunger closes to the lower port. Remaining oil is forced upward through the center of the patches into the plunger into the recess between the upper helix and lower cutoff, from which can flow back into the supply chamber until the helix closes. Upper port rotation over the plunger, movement of this rack chain with the position of helix in relation to the ports. This advantage of retarding closing on the ports beginning with the ending of the injection period. As a result of the regulation of the volume fuel charge injected to the cylinder. F. When control rack is pulled out completely, the upper part of the port is not closed with the helix until after lower port is uncovered. This means that the fuel and high pressure cylinder being bypassed back to the fuel supply and no fuel is injected to the combustion chamber. When the control rack is pushed into the fully upward port, closed shortly after the low port, but that has been covered with the proceeding of the full selective stroke with a maximum injection. From no delivery to the fully delivery position with the control rack with the counter of the helix advance for the closing of the ports beginning with the injection. On the downward trough of the plunger meter amount of the fuel is forced through the center passage valve, similarly through the check valve again, spray type valve. Sufficient fuel pressure built up. The spray tip valve is forced off the seat with the fuel is just shoved through the hole type of the injector nozzle. The choke valve prevents the air leakage from the combustion chamber of the fuel system should spray type tip valve not seat properly. Return upward point movement of the plunger. The highest pressure cylinder is again filled with the oil for the ports. Constant circulation of the fuel through the injectors back to the helps to maintain the even operation of the temperature injector that would otherwise tend to run very hot due to the extreme pressure. Constant circulation helps to remove all traces of air from the system. The amount of fuel circulated through the injector is the excessive maximum needs ensures sufficient fuel for all conditions. Are your pressure time injection system. Overall systems operation figure 52 following page. The pressure time injection system metering system measured by principle of the volume liquid fuel proportion of fluid pressure time allowed to flow. Side of the patch of liquid flows through the operation of the system when it's foul. Fuel tank will vented filler cap stores the fuel supply. Fuel is then supplied from the tank to the pressure time gear pump through the delivered line with the inline filter placed in series inline trap form material and moisture. So it shows your pressure time injection system, show the PDT, 6 places, PDT, fuel pump shows down, fuel filter from the tank, injector to the tank, pump, return to the tank. Our return line from the PTG, fuel tank on the pressure time gauge pump fuel tank is provided with a bleed off the excess board with the operational pressure relief. The pressure time gauge pump delivers the Control the amount of fuel, pressure, time delivered, injectors, pressure, delivery, fuel graded prime, pressure, time delivery, injectors is through a common rail type delivery line. Common rail type return line contains the time delivery injectors to the fuel tank. Excess fuel will be diverted to the fuel back to the fuel tank. Pressure time V injection figure 53 following page. Pressure time gauge pump driven directly with the engine one-to-one speed with the ratio of the pump that contain the main components. The four components of their operation described as follows. Are your pressurized time gear? Show the tachometer's filter screen, the manual knob shutdown gear pump, pulsation, tamper, idle screws, maximum speed spring, idle spring, throttle shaft, governor speed, plunger, governor weights, governor assist plunger, main shaft. Alright, the gear type pump draws fuel from the supply tank with the forces through the pump filter screen with the governor drive to the pump. The main shaft picks up and delivers the fuel through the fuel system. A pulsation damper mount with the gear pump contained with a sealed diaphragm that absorbs the pulsation, smooth the fuel flow through this fuel system from the gear pump. The fuel flow with the filter screen with the governor screen. The pressure time gear pump are equipped with bleed line that is attached to the engine injector return line to the tank. Prevents excessive fuel temperature, which the fuel pump using surplus fuel as a coolant. Bleed line function primarily with the pump throttle is set to idle speed. The gear pump output I do to engine operating speed occurs during downhill operation. Special check valve and or fitting is used within the gear pump to accomplish bleeding action. The governor control of the flow of the fuel with the gear pump as well as the maximum idle speed. With the maximum mechanical governor is actually with its system spring weight. The two function first of the governor maintain the efficient fuel with the idling with the throttle control with the idle position. Second, will restrict the flow fuel with the injectors above the maximum rated RPM. With the idle spring with the governor spring back in the position with the governor plunger with the idle fuel port is open enough to permit the passage of fuel maintain the engine speed. During operation between the idle and maximum speed, fuel flows through the governor to the injector according to the engine requirement. The control of the throttle and limited with the side of the idle spring with the plunger counterable with the pressure time air fuel pump. With the engine reach for the governor speed with the governor weight for the governor plunger. The fuel flow through the injector restricted at the same time in other passage. Open and dump the fuel back into the main pump body. This and this manner with the engine speed with the control limited with the governor regardless of the throttle position. Fuel leveling pumps and flows through the shutdown valve into the supply lines into the injectors. Throttle provides a means to operate manually with control speed and idle when they require various operating conditions. Speed low with the pressure time gear pump flows through the governor to the throttle shaft with the idle speed with the fuel flow with the idle port with the governor barrel. Passes the throttle shaft with the operator with above the idle speed. Fuel flows through the main governor barrel port with the throttle holding on the shaft. The fuel shutdown valve is located on the top of the fuel pump. Shut off the fuel to the injector master switch on the cylinder and open the valve. Will switch open off the spring-loaded valve will return with the opposition indicate with electrical failure with the rotation of the pump. Knob clockwise permanent fuel with the flow through the valve. The knob is then located on the front valve. Your pressure time delivery injectors and the pressure time delivery injectors is provided on each engine cylinder to spray fuel in the combustion chamber. The pressure time delivery injectors are of a unit type operated with the engine's base camshaft with the port and fuel flow for the connection with the top of the fuel pump, the shutdown valve thoroughly with the supply line into the low drill patch with the cylinder head front with the engine, the second drilling with the head aligned with the upper injector, radial groove drain away excess fuel with the fuel drain with the flywheel of the engine allow with the return unused fuel with the fuel tank. There are four phases of the injection operation. Metering 54 view A with the following page. If the blades begin with the plunger or the just begin with the move downward, one of the engines begin with the compression stroke. The fuel is trapped into the cup. Check valve stops the fuel from flowing backwards. The fuel begins to be pressurized with excessive fuel flows around the lower angular ring, upper barrel, and trap there. Pre-injection figure 54 view B on the following page. The plunger is almost all the way down. The engine is almost at the end of the compression stroke. Fuel is being pressurized by the plunger injector. Injection figure 54 view C on the following page. The plunger is almost all the way down. The fuel is injected on the 8 orifices of the engine, the very end of the compression stroke. Purging 54 view D on the following page. The plunger is all the way down. Injector furnished for the fuel is flowing for the injector around the low angular groove with a drilled passageway in the barrel around the upper angular groove and out from the fuel with the drain with the cylinder with the power stroke. During the excessive exhaust stroke, the plunger moves up and down, wait, and begin the cycle all over again. The PBS and distributor injection system. The overall system of the PBS distributor system of the pump sometimes charges the fuel, so each for the injection properly timed interval. The difference of the PSB system is that it charges the fuel and sent directly from the pump at the high pressure necessary for the injection. Figure 54 shows the pressure time delay delivery and inspection injection system. Spring plunger, fuel inlet, check bulb, barrel, low angular ring cup, camshaft, fuel drain. Fuel in, A meter in compression, intake, power stroke, purging, injection, pre-injection, depurging. Eliminates the need for unit type injection associated linkage camshaft, making systems less cumbersome. The injector are the same basic design as one of the multiple unit injectors. The nozzles usually are over the whole type. Our PSB distribution systems use a fuel return line, injectors for nozzles 6 places, fuel delivery line 6s, and then from the tank to the fuel injection pump from the tank. Alright, the PSB injector pump, the PSG injection pump, compact self-contained housing, all components of the injector operation is shown in figure 56 on the following page. PSB contains the plunger type pump that creates a high pressure fuel charge. The injector pump is driven by the camshaft contained with the PBS unit. Fuel is delivered with the PBS pump with the fuel tank with the fuel delivery pump with regulated pressure approximately 20 psi. Low pressure fuel supply entered the pump chamber. The inlet port with the plunger is retracted fully as taking the plunger. Begins delivery stroke with the fuel intake passage blocked with the trap fuel with the pump chamber. The delivery stroke with the plunger then pushes the charged fuel with the chamber through the delivery patch to the high pressure fuel charge. Unseat the delivery valve allowing the flow of the distribution chamber. Show the PSB injection pump in operation. Alright, the pump plunger has a spoon-like reshape of the diameter about halfway down the side of the conjunction with the pump cylinder formed with the distribution chamber. The slot with a cut with the plunger of the top of the distribution system. As it reciprocates, the plunger is also rotated through with the quill gear of the rotate with the slot lines that equally space the passage of inside of the plunger bore. Each passage is connected with the fuel injector, reciprocating rotating motion of the time that the plunger will go through the delivery stroke with the line which even the injector is passage. Enable the PSB injector pump to deliver the fuel charge within each of the consecutive injector every time the plunger makes a complete revolution. The PSB pump with the gear of the engine with the camshaft rotate with the camshaft speed, with the cam contained with half of as many lobes as the engine has cylinders. Therefore, 3 cam lobes are if the engine has 6 cylinders. Pump plunger is geared with the rotate 1/2 camshaft speed with arranging allowing the PSB pump to deliver the charge of the fuel each injector every 2 crankshaft revolutions corresponding with the requirements of a 4-stroke cycle diesel. A hole called the spill port drilled in the lower portion of the pump plunger spill port connected to the pump the chamber with another drill past the spill port covered with a plunger sleeve where a position is adjusted with the control lever through an eccentrically mounted pin. The movement of the control lever to control the up and down position of the plunger sleeve, the position of the control lever to determine the governor when the sleeve is in its extreme downward position. Spill port was immediately uncover the plunger, begin to deliver stroke, and this covered all the pressure from the pump chamber to the bleed off the pump, return with the position. There will be no fuel delivery into the injectors. Alright, when the plunger sleeve with extremely upward position, the spill port covered it until the plunger almost reached to the end of the delivery stroke with the position with the delivery maximum fuel with the injectors. As the plunger moves upward, the pressure developed in the pump chamber to unseat the delivery valve. Fuel flow with the distribution chamber to insert by a slot within the plunger whenever the injector is scheduled to receive it. The amount of fuel delivered in each injector charge will increase proportionally with the plunger sleeve. The move with an extreme downward to extreme upward position, the higher plunger sleeve, longer than effective with the pump stroke plunger movement through the spill port is uncovered. Are your fuel supply pumps? Generally, the fuel injection pumps must be applied with the fuel under pressure for the following reason. Injection pumps lack the suction ability to draw fuel from the tanks themselves. It is important to supply the fuel except for the injection pumps so that the fuel may be able to cool, lubricate the system, therefore bypassing it back to the tank. Without a supply pump, the system would lose the primary whenever the pump is no delivery mode. The supply pumps generally are positive displacement type with a performance independent of any other reasonable variation, viscosity, pressure, temperature of the fuel. And the majority of the equipment of the fuel supply pump built with the injection pump unit with the cuts down on the fuel tube and the complexity of the equipment allowing with the supply pump to share some engine power takeoff of the injection pump, the vane type supply pump, the basic overall operating of the vane type supply pump, same with the vane type oil pump, plunger type supply pump, figures 57 on the following page. This type of the pump is always mounted with the injection pump, whereas the driven the injection pump camshaft with a variable stroke self-regulating pump, then will build pressure on the predetermined point. 57 shows the plunger T supply pump, the injection pump cam, the plunger chamber in the back of the plunger, inlet valve, inlet and outlet valve, outlet valve. Alright, 2, operation. Plunger flower with the camshaft force of the plunger, spring with the flower comes high point of the cam lobe of the plunger, move with the retracted position of the plunger movement, create with the suction pump chamber, the cover, the fuel to empty the inlet valve. As the cam lobe comes around again, it forces the plunger upward and forces out of the chamber the outlet valve with an injection pump. Or the cam follower drive the plunger with the spring calibrated so that it flex rather than drive plunger. The pressure of the pump chamber reach for the desired maximum. The effective regulate for the pump pressure. Gear type supply pump. The basic overall operation gear type supply pump is the same as the gear type oil pump. And I think we're going to cut the tape there, and I think governors should be kind of his own lesson, so we're going to cut the tape there.